Welcome to Soul Elevation, guiding your ascension to new heights. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin, and I'm super excited about this episode. I've been enjoying Jennifer Carmody's work, also known as JK Ultra, for a while now because her research is so great and she really gets me thinking and expanding my awareness when I come across her latest topics. And one thing to be mindful of with Jennifer's work is that she's not afraid to go into the shadow side of society as well as herself. There are many people who are afraid of the darker, shadowy topics, and I personally ignored that side of spirituality for quite a while. It took me time to find value in it and to be able to hold space for it. And we go into this a lot in this episode, and if you're like I was when I felt shadow work was not for me, I highly encourage you to stay with this episode and see what comes up for you. If this episode is coming into your purview, it could be that you're ready for this next important step on your path. Jennifer is a researcher, content creator, and speaker known for exploring hidden truths, esoteric knowledge, and the mysteries of human consciousness. Through her engaging online presence, she explores topics like mind control, ancient civilizations, extraterrestrial influences, and the deeper layers of reality that mainstream narratives often overlook. With a passion for uncovering suppressed knowledge, Jennifer empowers her audience to question, expand their awareness, and reclaim their sovereignty. So we'll get into this amazing episode in just a moment. But first, I'm so excited to share about my new book, Your Authentic Awakening, A Guide to Everyday Spiritual Living, which will be available this spring. This book is designed to help you reach new heights of spiritual awakening. It's full of spiritual guidance, practical tools, and captivating personal stories, all working together to expand your consciousness and open your heart. And now, enjoy this episode. Well, welcome, Jenn. I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for being here today.
I'm so excited. And also, I'm excited for some of the things that we're going to talk about too.
Yes. Right before we started recording, I was saying you're so good and adept at weaving the light and the dark, and we need both. And not everybody will go where you will go. And I don't explore a lot of these topics really on my podcast traditionally. So I'm so excited to have the opportunity to do that with you, and also just to kind of get into a little bit of the personal stuff too, and how you've affected me this year, because it's been really powerful for what 2025 has brought for me. So we will get to that. But let's just start with a little bit of your background. Can you talk a little bit about how you got to where you are now and you became passionate about exploring like what's under the surface of everything?
Right. So, in my upbringing, I did grow up around like some magic spell work stuff. So, part of half of my family is Catholic, and I was raised in Catholicism, but it just didn't resonate a lot. And also, that is like super ritualistic. Like, there is no more spell work than the Catholic Church, right? So I grew up in that, but then also then my dad's side of the family, his mom was, I guess like, you would say like a witch or something like that. And so, but she was a little bit more towards baneful type of spell work type of things, or at least from what we saw. So I actually grew up very afraid of spirituality in that way because, I would see her maybe do hexes on people and then actually see that person have bad things happen to them.
Oh,
So,
wow. That's
yeah. And
powerful.
so actually, when I was really young, my parents had gotten divorced when I was, around 1 years old. And they did this like basically his own mother, my dad's own mom, did this like brought my mom to go do this spell on my dad that involved like his sock and cow's blood in this jar. And then my mom is not into that at all. So she kind of didn't know what she was getting into. So the last part of this like ritual was to smash the jar. And she was terrified. So she took the jar and kept it in our house for 18 years, hidden in the back of a closet because she was afraid to smash the jar. So we all like grew up with this like creepy cow's blood jar with terrible energy that kind of like took over like a part of the house. And then my mom bought like a like 10, 15 feet tall painting of Jesus on black velvet, which was also just as creepy because it was one of those paintings that looks like a carrot, like your eyes are like getting followed by
Everywhere.
it.
Yeah, where it looks at you
So
wherever you are.
she put that next to the closet that it was in. And so, I was always like, if those things didn't happen, because I am such like a research-based person, I wonder if I would have had a different outlook on things. And then when I was 5 years old, my whole family had a UFO experience. And that was more so my path of like, I wasn't that much into the spirituality as much as I was into like aliens. And a lot of people in my family also have ghost experiences. So I kind of grew up in knowing 100% that this is all real. And also, I think that's what maybe makes me a little bit grounded is because, you know, that this was always in real life. I have a lot of sympathy for people who a lot of people abruptly woke up in like 2020 because of the energies, the circumstances, the real life stuff that was happening. And those people I have so much sympathy for because it was like, it's a jolt. You've lived in the
Mhm.
normal world and now you're in this one foot in one world, one in the other. Whereas for me, I still went to school after that and was like, can I tell the class about the UFO that I saw?
Oh, wow. Was that the UFO experience that you had in New Jersey? The one, were you 5? I
Yes.
was thinking you were a
Yes.
teenager when that happened.
No, so I was 5, and then the rest of my siblings were older because I'm one of the youngest ones. So they
Okay.
were like 14, 13. And yeah, and then I mean, I've never had another experience really. I mean, I've had things in the dream state, in meditation, things like that, but that is in the physical experience. And then I haven't had another in the physical experience ever again.
Oh, wow. And so what was that like? And I think I saw something recently. Did you have your sister on your podcast? And she was
Yes.
saying that she remembers it a little bit differently. So was there not a universal experience? Like it was, I mean, it's subjective, right?
Right. So everybody actually has like the main details all the same, which is right before a white dove flew over us. I actually didn't see the white dove, but everybody else saw it, which is then why I went over to sit next to them because I was like, oh, I'm going to wait for the bird to come back. And then that's when I had, we all have a similar experience, which is like the couch was in the backyard for some reason. And we all have this weird feeling that there was another person there, but no one can identify who the other person there was. And then the things where it gets a little different is the sound. So my sister remembers the sound very differently. Like I remembered it as kind of like when you swing a bat really fast, that kind of whoosh, whistle, air braking type of sound, but like really loud, like echoing down. And my
Mm.
sister remembers more of a boom, fireworks type of sound. And then, but then we all kind of have the same experience from there, which is then super fast from the sound. The UFO was in the yard across from us, kind of pulsing on top of the shed of our neighbor. And we all remember very like similarly, but I feel like I actually have the most details of anyone that day. And then my oldest sister, she had saw me get interviewed by Linda Moulton Howe, and she called me and was like, you forgot one part. And I was like, oh, like what was that? And she said there was a shadow being there. I was like, I have no idea about this shadow being. This is the first time that I'm hearing it. She's like, yeah, everything was the same except for like that shadow being. I'm like,
Oh
oh.
my gosh.
So, yeah, so we do all have the same experience, but then there's these little factors that are different. But the same general thing is that the bird came, we were all in the backyard, there was the couch in the backyard, there was a sound, and then instantly from the sound, the ship was there. And then from that point, I remember us sitting and then standing ahead of where we were. And then that's almost like we all started running at the same time. My sister remembers that once the craft was there, then there was a point where it zoomed away. And she doesn't remember running back to the house. She says the last thing she remembers is looking and seeing a neighbor there. And so I ran. So it's kind of like, these little different perspectives of it, but all the main details are the same.
Mhm. Wow. And so how did that inform you as a child and then where you find yourself now? Like how did it lead to what you're doing now?
So I had always then been, I always loved aliens after that. You know, if I was at like a fair or a carnival or something, I'm like, oh my God, I need to win that alien right now. And so I loved them. But then I did also have like some nights I would go to sleep after that and I would have this like horrible fear that three aliens were going to come in through my window and take me, which is interesting because a lot of these things I didn't know until I was older are like very key factors in the abduction phenomenon. So, like the things like compressed time, where everything happens in 1 second, and logically it doesn't make sense that it all happened in 1 second. The missing time from when we were sitting to then when we were standing, feeling like there was a moment before we unfroze. So, then that's like what Bud Hopkins called missing time. You know, Linda Moulton Howe had pointed out that this neighbor that appeared at the end is another thing in her research where someone appears after the incident and says, so I didn't speak to the neighbor. I ran inside. My sisters had spoken to the neighbor and the neighbor said, "Oh, it was just a plane." So that's the thing, is that Linda was actually interested in my story because she says this is another common thing with abduction phenomenon, is that there's like kind of like a cap at the end where someone tells you it's not what it was. And this person just kind of like for no reason all of a sudden is there. And so there was a lot of, and then also too, the other like major thing, which is part of like abduction phenomenon, which Linda Moulton Howe talks about, Yvonne Smith talks about, is this white animal that appears right before. So a lot of times it's a white owl. And that's kind of like was a common one. But with Yvonne Smith's work, she actually has had instances of it being other types of birds like mine. Also, she says sometimes it could be like a white horse she's seen, a white deer. Sometimes it's like an abnormally white moth. And so it's interesting that this, and so she calls them screen memories,
Mhm.
where she believes that these are actually implanted memories that are happening. Now, what's interesting is that for 25 years, I thought I ran away from this UFO. Then going under hypnosis, I was told that I went on the craft. And, you know, I was like, I mean, it makes sense. I just had never really thought of that because I always saw it as I ran away. I had this experience in the physical. And I mean, I guess, you know, it is a little bizarre to think that you're going to outrun a UFO or something like that if it wants anything from you. But so then through hypnosis, through QHHT, I also then went under with Sarah Brexman Cosme. And then I went under with Yvonne Smith, who she uses Bud Hopkins' method to retrieve abduction memories. And she's evolved the method over the last 30 years. And what then came about of this information, which is then, you know, where it gets, I know it sounds crazy to see that you saw a UFO, but then this is where it gets really crazy, which is, I found out that my soul was switched, that the soul that I was born with was in the body until 5 years old. And then my soul came in at five.
Oh,
And this
okay.
used technology to switch it.
Okay, I got full body chills when you said that. Just like, whoa. And for me, that's like my body going, yep, that's right. So that's fascinating. Now, so you that came up during hypnosis. What does your logical mind like do on reflection? Does that make sense to you?
It does. So, you know, I had already been posting online about this stuff before. I found out in mid 2023 was when I actually had gotten that information, because the first time I went under hypnosis, I was told you went on the craft, but it's not safe for you to know yet. And that was in 2021. So that was the first that I had ever had an inclination that there could have been an abduction. I always thought it was just a sighting. And then, and I was also kind of like, well, what's not safe for me to know? You know,
Yeah.
because I had already been aware of walk ins, I had already been aware of things like that. And I never felt like I could potentially be a walk in because I'm like, well, I know for sure that I am me.
Mhm.
Um, but I guess there was someone else here. So with Sarah, then we started to retrieve like what was so my first hypnosis, the higher self had told me that the purpose of this experience was because I was meant to validate other people's experience when it comes to aliens. But at that time, I was working in a restaurant. I was not doing the JK Ultra stuff. So I was like, I mean, it is, I did always like anywhere I go, someone will be like, I saw a UFO one time. So
And it's
that
like,
did
tell me
happen.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And I'm like,
why
I
they know to
believe
tell
you.
you. Yeah.
And so I had always had that experience in interpersonal things. And I would have friends that would be like, something really weird happened to me. And then I'll be able to like point them into different resources and things because I was always into then researching it. And then, so to kind of go with my journey, I had this alien inclination always. And then in 2012, I moved to LA and I then started to go through more of a spiritual awakening, which was separate than kind of the alien thing. You know, some people go through the alien thing after the spirituality. I was very heavy into that. And then I started to become more comfortable with, you know, things like crystals and manifestation and things like that. And then, but my real big awakening, because this was always integrated, and we have many awakenings, you know, some people talk about their spiritual awakening. We have like 20 spiritual awakenings in our life because it keeps, an awakening is when your awareness goes from one to a more expanded place. So as long as you keep learning and stay open to changing your opinions, you'll have as many spiritual awakenings as possible in a lifetime. But what I really consider to be like my big spiritual awakening is when I got into conspiracies in around the Mayan calendar ending at the end of 2012. I remember looking at the clock and it was like 11 p.m. Pacific time. And I'm like, well,
Here we go.
if this happens. And then from that point, it was like all of these things just kept like synchronicities all kept leading me towards a bit of a darker path of information of like, oh my God, I can't believe this is what's really happening in the world. And I was always, you know, like kind of like punk rock and stuff. So I was always like kind of anti-government and stuff like that. And always knew that there was like hidden forces and manipulation happening. But then for it to kind of get intertwined with like, there might be something metaphysical, spiritual happening with this as well. And but what's beautiful is that then over the years, the more that I've learned, the more that I've healed and continued to be a seeker versus then becoming a knower, as then my perception continues to expand on it. And so a lot of these initial like conspiracies and stuff that were very eye-opening for me, I have a completely different perspective on now. And I feel more so like, you know, everything is always working to the highest good, no matter how dark and disgusting it looks on the surface.
Oh, so let's unpeel that a little bit. Do you have like, does an example come to mind in terms of, well,
Oh,
when I
for sure.
first learned about it, I was like, these are demons, you know, and now I'm like, wait a minute, what really is going on here?
Right. I have so many examples. Like one, for example, is say this, and I don't know, this is probably not what you get in on to on your show, but like stuff like the reptilian thing that like,
Okay.
oh, these beings are like outside of our dimension and they're feeding on our negativity. And through more self-healing, self-love, self-acceptance, going through those hidden parts of the shadow are basically like then to see that like this is a reflection of something that is within us. And so there's a couple of things. I do believe, I used to believe that there was kind of dark forces or evil forces in the universe. And now I think there is only one force, which is God, the universe, the one, the source of everything, the creator of everything, and that these are actually, you know, the devil, the demons, the reptilians, any of these things are actually serving the one, and they're pushing us to see our own light, that these are not proof of evil. So I think there's only two reasons why evil happens. And not to say that evil actions don't happen, because evil is subjective and there are definitely things that are absolutely wrong to do. But I don't believe that there's a big bad. There's not like a force behind it. And so basically there's two reasons why this would happen is we're all part of God. We're all part of the one. And some people have become so wounded that they've become disconnected from that knowingness. And they're looking through all of these dark means to feel something, to feel that spark. So, one reason why evil happens is because we're all children of God, we're all part of God. And we've just gotten so wounded and hurt and lost that we've forgotten. And then people are looking for pleasures through dark things because they don't know how to feel in another way. And then the other side say things like reptilians or devils or whatever people believe in, that is actually, in my opinion, kind of like some higher forms of consciousness that are willing to go there to sacrifice a part of their own ascension for all of us to see our own light and for all of us to have an experience that allows us to know that we are actually light, that we are actually God. And that's what I believe the true light work is. And that's kind of, where one of my little things with some of the new age stuff. And I'm very new age. I'm not one of these people who will bash the new age. I'm very new age as well. But this kind of a lot of the love and light worker stuff, it's very mirroring some of the Christian, like very dogmatic views. And so I'm like, you really want to be a light worker? Go have compassion for someone that's an abuser. Go have compassion for someone who's done something wrong. That is light work. Light work, it's very easy to be in love and light when you only surround yourself with everybody who thinks they only do the right thing. So that's where I kind of have learned to, because I definitely was in that love and light thing throughout the last 13 years. But now I'm like, actually, like the real light is seeing that these people are also children of God. They're also part of Source. They're also part of the One. They're the very same thing that we are all made of. And they're just lost. And if I can see the light in them, it might help them to then see the light in themselves and be able to connect back with that energy.
Yes. I mean, the observer effect in the quantum world and how there is no objectivity. Everything is changed by what observes it. So if we can get into that compassion, we do change what we observe. And it's so fun to hear you speak about your journey and the evolution of your journey, of your beliefs and how you understand things to happen, because it's it's such an incredible balance of light and dark, like room for everything. And we can get light from dark, but also the like everything is one. I mean, it's very like love and light, but it's got this depth to it that is like, okay, we're going to hold space for more than that. And it's a great lead in to what I referenced when we started, which was hearing you speak about some inner work that came where you were perceiving things within you as demonic or whatnot, and it really kind of blew the doors open for me in terms of my own journey. And so I would love for you to share whatever you feel inspired to in terms of the shamanic journey or the ayahuasca or whatever you feel called to.
So, a little over a year ago at Conscious Life Expo of 2024, I'm like, I go so hard when I'm like very extroverted. So like when I'm in like a space like that, like I cannot be stopped. I am like in the vortex of overdoing it. And like, so I had been really like kind of like depleted myself of like multiple days of like so much like deep conversation and so much deep transformation and doing activations and talking to all these people about, and then also the space is filled with like giant moldavites and these Stargate, technology things and all of this stuff. And there's, biochargers. So it's like everything is like super, super heightened. And then I'm like on like 10,000 of like talking to everybody and going boom, boom, boom. And so at these times that we become super depleted, whether your like basic instinctual needs are not being met, like being hangry, being tired, being cold, being like undernourished, that in those moments is when things can come up. And this is why when we're hangry, we lash out at people. Or if we're tired, we get super frustrated. And those are like a shadow, something inside of ourselves that is very under wraps when we have everything in our comfort and everything is going perfectly fine. And we have everything we need and everything we want. We've created this beautiful bubble for ourselves. But when we start to like go down to these like, my basic
Primal.
needs are not being met,
Yeah.
this is when, that little feistiness, that stuff can come up. And so I was very in that state. I was hangry, I was exhausted, I was tired, I was depleted. And I've actually learned to appreciate that now. But of course, these were the type of discomforts that I had been running from most of my life because nobody wants to feel uncomfortable. We all want to
Right.
feel great. So we will do things to mitigate those moments, but actually like there's so much beauty in those moments. And so
Don't
I
tell
was
the
actually
Snickers company.
yes,
They've built their whole thing on don't get hungry.
right. And like so I had this moment where basically I was near this like iridology booth where they read your pupil and tell you, or read your iris and tell you all of these, things about yourself. And I was really just kind of like hanging for a moment because I was kind of like, oh, maybe I need some food. Maybe I need some water. Maybe I need something. And she's like, did you want to do a reading? And I was like, I'm not sure. And then this woman and her son, who was like a teenager, came over and I was like, oh, are you guys going to do a reading? And then the woman's like, oh, that's Noah. Noah has healer's eyes. I'm like, oh, cool, cool. I like look at this like 17 or 16-year-old kid and this kid really had healer's eyes because when I looked into his eyes, he looked at me like, and I was like looking at him and kind of back to what you said about this observer effect. It was like him seeing me allowed me to see something within myself that was so hidden from me. And he looked horrified. He looked like horrified and I felt so exposed. It felt like someone walked in on me naked and was scared. Like and it was so like I was embarrassed. I was like, what is going on? And I had this kind of weird out of body experience for a moment where I saw both of us from the third person perspective. And there was this like creature, reptilian like creature, very militant, feminine, wrathful being on my side, towering over me. And I'm like, ah, like, get away from me, this kid. I like run over to my friend and I just felt myself like kind of start going down an abyss energetically, emotionally, psychologically. It was like I felt like I was going to like the sunken place in Get Out, where you're like going below reality and into like almost like an underworld. And I just kept like, and I still kept pushing myself that day. We went out to dinner with other friends. I went and it was beyond what I should have done. But that was what was needed to be down to literally empty. My tank was below empty. And then I realized I'm like, this thing, my best friend that I was with, Chelsea, she's a shaman. So she's like, it's totally fine, dude. Don't worry. This is what I do. We'll get rid of it. She's like, no problem. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I don't think we can get rid of this thing. And she's like, no, of course we can get rid of it. And I'm like, no, it's me. It's a part of me. It can't be, it's mine. And so then time and we needed to have the right time to do it. So about 2 weeks had passed. And in those 2 weeks, I literally felt like this weird half in this world, half out of this world experience where I was like, it felt like this thing was like in hospice. And I was like nurturing this like demon monster thing. And I was like, I was in like, and now I'm someone who I'm very like, have avoided going to a dark place in most of my life. Not to say I don't get like angry or things like that, but like I really had limited my emotional capacity throughout my life as a coping mechanism when I was younger. I was like, I couldn't even cry as a kid. Like I couldn't, so like I didn't go to this full range of emotion. After doing ayahuasca 6 months before this happened, my heart blew open. And what I realized is like, it's a pendulum. As high as you can go is now is as low as the door has opened. So I had also not really allowed myself to feel true happiness, true joy, true love, true things because I was keeping myself in this very even state emotionally. So I've always been very emotionally even, but allowing myself to really go that high, I didn't realize then opens the door for an equal amount of low, which has never been safe to be felt. And all of this stuff in my life that I had never really looked at or dealt with, I had dealt with it in the psychological.
Mhm.
Psychological, I've already broken down everything and have a deep understanding of all of it. It hadn't dropped into my heart yet. Once my heart was open, now all of this stuff was able to drop into the heart. And then so then I do this shamanic journey with my friend and I didn't even know what to expect because the only time I had ever worked with a shaman was with plant medicine. And it's crazy. She's my best friend, but had never worked on each other in this way. And I had just done her QHHT. So it was funny that we had been friends for years, but we had never did like our work on each other. We just do it in our friendly social way of just being in each other's life. And so I didn't know what to expect in a shamanic journey without any plant medicine. And so, and it was like the second that I got into that meditative state, she's like, okay, I'll find you on the other side. And I'm like, what does that mean? And right away, I saw myself as a child in a quarantined white padded room, and it was myself around like 2 years old, and it was like feral, as if anything had ever been locked in a cage for so long and not given love, not given attention. It was like bouncing off the walls. It was like a little demonic Tasmanian devil of a child. And then, when we came out of this shamanic journey, my friend saw the exact same thing, me around 2 years old in the same exact room. And she said, she came into this like, we're going to like banish this thing. We're going to clear it. We're going to move it. And then she gets in and she's like, oh my God, this is Jenn as a baby. And so she's like, really, and especially being so close, it's different than when she does it on other clients, because she's like, oh my God, this is my best friend as a wounded child. And then she's like, it's so dark too. It's like evil, basically. But like I said, evil is being so disconnected from God, forgetting so much your own light. And so then she had to like work to know, like she had to like call in her guides and my guides to be like, what do we do? She's like, I'm not used to dealing with something like this. And it needed to be integrated. It needed to be merged back. And so, and it wasn't like an overnight fix, because I literally had to sit for the next like 3 months, and I got sick. I lost my hearing, and I never get sick. I literally went deaf in one ear. Like I was so, and it was an infection in my ear, and it was everything happened to me. I got a cold. I had flu-like symptoms. I was in bed. My friends were never used to seeing me like this. And they're like, Jenn, do you want to like do a vision board or something? I'm like, this is not a place of manifestation. And it's like, but what had to happen was I really needed to feel everything that I had not allowed myself to feel, feeling unloved, feeling unworthy, feeling, actually, and I have an understanding of these things. I don't blame my family or anything like that anymore. And I forgive everything and everyone. But, there was actually something like things that I had never seen in myself, which was like the shame that I had around feeling unloved by my family. And it was such a deep unworthiness that I realized had caused so many. And like, it caused me to look at like, actually, a lot of times people think shadow work is the things that you don't like about yourself. What I realized, the shadow work that really needed to be done, is actually what we believe to be our best qualities. I think it's, I'm strong, I'm personable, I'm friendly, I, get along with all these people, like all of these like really great qualities that I have. What is the root of these great qualities? Oh, it's because I didn't feel loved in my family. So I actually sought that out in social situations. And so much of my personality, and when we really look at the personality, I talk a lot about how like we're born as like a 360 personality. You come here as a baby, there's nothing that is inhibiting you. And then what happens is slowly the world makes us go more narrow, 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 until we're this tiny path of what we believe to be our personality. And a personality is literally like a series of habits and coping mechanisms. And so I really started to dissect all of these things about myself, like me being emotionally balanced and even. That actually comes from me not feeling safe to have any other emotions except to be balanced. Me being strong actually comes from the fact that I didn't feel protected as a child. Me being, friendly comes from the fact that I was making up for something that I wasn't getting in the people who were supposed to be nurturing me. And looking at every single thing, like my toughness, that was because I felt like I had to puff up and prove myself. Even me being able to like speak very like with conviction and confidence is because I had to. And then to really look at all of these things and be able to like, of course, it's like easy to look at like, oh, I feel this insecurity because of this. But then to really look at the shadow work and say, no, what about my best qualities are actually coping mechanisms? And that doesn't mean you have to lose them. And then I realized too, like me being so strong, I was terrified of being weak. I was so afraid to be vulnerable. I was so afraid to give anyone the little, like almost like the ammo to use against me of my deepest wounds. And then like after all of this, and it took like some months of integration, now I'm like, there is literally nothing to ever be afraid of again, as long as I live. Like I've already faced all of these things. And so, and that doesn't mean things don't come up. Of course, things still come up. I'm still human. It's not like I'm, uh, infallible now. It's like now I can be like, oh, I see that when I'm getting triggered by something, let me take a moment and really like think, what is the truth behind this triggering? And it made me also realize too, like sometimes I see people that do trigger me that are maybe other teachers or other things or whatever it is. And I realized like a lot of times I'm like, oh, it's something they're doing wrong, something I don't like about them. Through this, I realized I'm like, oh, I'm the one that's out of alignment. I'm the one that is not seeing my value and I'm triggered by their value that they're propping themselves. And sure, they got their own issues, but that's not my problem. The reason it's coming up for me is what part of me. And then it really helped me to also see like what part of myself is in everybody. Like, I see myself like kind of I don't want to curse, but it's like a spiritual F boy. Like these guys who are in the spiritual scene who are like using all like the divine feminine stuff to get laid. I would want to like, I would want to like rip these guys' heads off. Like I'll be like, oh, I'm these guys' worst nightmare. They're gonna come in here and tell these girls, wow, you have such beautiful energy to get laid. And then like working through that and being like, what part of myself is a spiritual F boy actually? Like, and really be able to look at these things. So like now I see the beauty in the darkness that I'm like, whoa, the darkness is magnificently beautiful. And there is so much to learn. In some ways, more to learn because it's also like you don't even know how much is there because it's dark because it's partly in hiding. So as you start to look at it, it's like more and more and more get revealed. And I really think that this is how we heal the collective is, a lot of times people are very focused on like bring the frequency up. That's how we heal the collective. And it's like, okay, but if you're still all of this darkness is still here, it will continue to find different ways to be asked to be seen. And this is when we're looking out and we're seeing these wars and division and inequalities and just all of the horrible stuff that's happening. I don't think we're going to love and light our way out of it. I really think that we're going to have to look at in ourselves and be like, this battle between light and dark, what is the battle of light and dark within me? This spiritual warfare, what is the spiritual warfare within me that is not allowing myself to love part of myself that is judgmental? Judgment is a part of God. Every single thing in existence is a part of God. So it's like as much as we take ourselves and say, oh no, it's wrong for me to feel angry. It's wrong for me to feel jealous. It's wrong for me to feel triggered. It's wrong for me to feel judgmental. We're fractalizing ourselves and saying, no, 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 you're not good enough here. And we're perpetuating this to continue. So, I do feel that this is part of the reason why I've been like kind of propelled into this spiritual space. First, through a lot of the New Earth stuff, which was kind of where a lot of my initial following and stuff had come from. And then even my perspective on those things has changed. Like, I really believe that, like, I kind of did initially believe a lot of these channelings and a lot of the prophecies that, like, poof, there's going to be this timeline shift where we all magnificently get shifted. And now I'm like, oh no, like this is happening within us. Every single thing in this universe is within us. Even like the starseed stuff, like it seems very expansive to be like, oh, out there is these other souls. And I'm one of those souls from out there. But actually, the more you go deeper into the self, is like, that's actually a box that you're putting yourself in, that it's out there. It's some other planet somewhere. No, it is all within us. It is all here. There is only here. There is nowhere else. And so I think that's kind of the next stage of spirituality is like, thank God for all of the people who laid the foundation of what we were able to build with the new age, with the love and light, with the guru stuff. But now it's really like, does that make it to the collective? Not being in reality, not being grounded, without being like, oh no, I need to heal the judgment of myself before I can expect the world to heal judgment. And I love this Maya Angelou quote that she says, nothing human is alien to me. And it's like people are looking at what's happening in the Middle East, in Russia, in China, in these like wars. And it's like, what part of us is still doing this. It's easy to say, I would never do that. I would never, all of these things that are bad in the world. It's very easy to say, I would never do that. But nothing human is alien to me. So until we start to acknowledge that every single one of us does have the ability to be any of these things, and if we did have different circumstances, if we did grow up where these people that are in war grew up, we would have a different perspective. And I really think that I'm also trying to kind of go away from kind of this higher and lower concepts in spirituality and try to go more towards expansive. Cause like, even too, I'm like, oh, I learned more information. So now I have a higher perspective. No, that's still the same superiority thing that is polluting this space. It's actually the vision is expanding, and we look at like the visible spectrum of light, it's expanding. So it's like, as we look at ourselves more expansively, we'll see the world more expansively. And it doesn't need to be like, oh, I know more, or I know above, or those people don't know enough. It's like the vision is just getting a wider and grabbing more to be seen.
I love that. And I feel like that ties so well in with the other aspect of your work too, which is more of the bringing to the surface kind of conspiracy, things that tend to be called conspiracies. Um, but that's kind of how I feel about that, where it's this opening up, it's the okay. I mean, speaking for myself personally, it's like I was only willing really to like look at this part of the spectrum. It was like I don't feel right when I like this stuff makes me feel disempowered. And so it was hard for me to really pay much attention to it. And it's been only like relatively recently that I have been able to be more open and expansive. And there is this collective aspect, this collective reflection. So, everything that you've said so beautifully about your own personal journey then applies to us as a collective as well, because humanity, and particularly in the West, I mean, where things are kind of looking like people are starting to shift their perspective, they're starting to understand things differently. And it is important for us to be able to see what's been under the surface. And you have had this has been a focus of yours for much longer than it has been of me. But there were so many things that you were saying where I was like, oh my gosh, the parallel between like your own personal journey and the collective journey. And one thing also that I wanted to be sure that I came back to is the guy with the healer eyes. Noah, was it?
I believe that was his name. I vaguely remember his name because I was so disoriented. I'm like, I felt like that was his name, but
Yeah,
he's just like some teenager that was there at a Conscious Life Expo with his mom. He wasn't like a speaker. He was just some
right.
random kid walking through the conference.
Well, and so you could see what he could see, and it was this like reptilian. How does that then, like, as you find out that this is actually this 2-year-old, as you and your friend uncover this actually a 2-year-old, how does that relate to the reptilian aspect of it?
So actually, it was the shadow that was getting cast behind it. So it's like that what we were seeing was the shadow of it. And, so it's kind of like, sometimes this like happens in like cartoons or whatever, where it's like they'll see this big scary shadow and then they zoom out and it's like some like little kid or something. It was actually like that. And it was like, this was like what it has kind of grown into in a way, like its own aspect. Like, so basically, and even the reptilian stuff, that was something that was really difficult for me. Like, over 10 years ago, I had like really was like kind of screwed up on that idea.
Mm.
And this idea that these beings could be outside of our reality, feeding on our negativity. Now I understand. Everybody's got to eat. Okay. And also, as above, so below. So, like, do we think that cockroaches and maggots and flies are evil? No, this is part of an ecosystem. Do we think that, shrimp are evil? No, it's part of an ecosystem. So,
Ooh.
in a way, it's almost like being grateful that something um,
Consume
is
this.
gonna, because what is gonna happen? We see this in our physical reality. We need the cockroaches. We need the flies. We need these maggots. Otherwise, what would happen? We'd be like literally sky high in decay. So I really think a lot of this stuff comes down to like expanding the perspective and getting away from this idea of like, oh, you ascend to the highest level and then you get to see things in their full light. And it's like, no, you can continue to widen the way that you're seeing things. And like the as above, so below works in every way. Like what you're saying with the personal journey mirrors the collective journey. But then the same thing with the energetic stuff is that like, actually, I'm grateful that there is potentially some beings that feed on the negativity, because then what would happen to it? Where would it go? And I also, too, I had to do work on that reptilian stuff because there's so much information, especially in the conspiracy space and especially in some of the 5D spirituality stuff about like us versus the reptilians, the war, the spiritual battle. And it's like, actually, what they're doing is a reflection of something within us. Everything that we're blaming these like alleged reptilian beings for is something that is in the collective. It is something that we are doing. We are doing the horrible things with children. We're the ones that are doing the wars. We're the ones that are doing the murder. We're the ones that are shaming and creating negativity. We don't need any outside force to do that for us. And so, like, really understanding that everything has a role and has a place. And what I had come to the terms with that concept is that like everybody has a job. And if there wasn't somebody to play the bad guy, would we get to be the good guy? Would we get to be the protagonist? We look at a movie. If there's no bad guy, everyone's like, that movie had no plot. That movie didn't make sense. And it's like, because the hero's journey is an archetype that is a blueprint of our reality. And we do need the enemy in some form or another to see our own light. I'm so bad at like, actually, I never saw like Harry Potter or like Star Wars or things like that. But like in these type of movies, there's obviously some type of bad guy arch nemesis character. And without that, we have no hero. So really learning this role, and I actually now kind of see them, this like reptilian concept, whether it is actually something or if like everything is actually within us and it is actually just a manifestation of something that is within us, whatever way you want to look at it, whether this is a physical, dimensional alien type species or not. And that is just literally like playing a part of the game so that we can learn about ourselves. And that's what I've come to learn about all this like kind of conspiracy, so I am like, I have one foot in and one foot out always, because I love to like get myself revved up and get my adrenaline going on like the evils of the world. Like I love it. Like it can be very addictive. This is something, as people get into conspiracies, I do want to give them that awareness, because I went down the rabbit hole so long ago and I was like crazy about it. Like I had almost like conspiracy psychosis like 13 years ago, because I was like, oh my God, the Illuminati symbolism everywhere. Oh my God, the Freemason stuff. Look at this and this. And I was losing my mind. I couldn't look at anything, any movie, any historical landmark, anything without seeing this stuff. And I'm
Yeah.
controlling the world.
Well, you just said recently, or I don't know if it was a repost, but you went into MK Ultra. I think you might have reposted it on Instagram, and you were like, "Okay, you guys, just be warned. This stuff, it's like even just researching it is so addicting, and it's so like it messes with your mind. So I did it, so you don't have to. So just like." And so if people are like, why is it JK Ultra? And you want to know more about MK Ultra, go to JK Ultra's account on Instagram and you can learn about it and not have to go through that psychosis that Jenn
Right.
had to go through.
And that's the thing is, so with the MK Ultra stuff, it is literally a trauma-based mind control. We all have trauma and we all have minds. So it is very easy to read those things and actually start to psych yourself out on your own reality, because it is literally designed to do that. And so that's something that I think when to be mindful of. And then the other thing with conspiracies overall, it does become like a drug, because the adrenaline hit, you can't watch a horror movie that is half as scary as real life. This is happening and they're really doing this to us. That is like, a million times above watching a horror movie, the type of adrenaline rush that you can get. And when your awareness, because people can go through spiritual awakenings because of new information. Sometimes that information could be spiritual. Sometimes it could be conspiracy. Sometimes it could be a loss, a tragedy, a life event. Sometimes it could be travel. There's many reasons why someone's awareness comes from here to here in an awakening. But when you the conspiracy method of awakening, which has happened and has also infiltrated the spiritual space over these last years, is like when you go from that, it is the worst brain bender of all because it is so demented and you can see it in everything and everything starts to go through this filter. And then you start looking for your next hit. So like this stuff with like the celebrities and like Diddy that's happening now. A lot of people are like, this is a distraction. And it's like, no, trust me, you're just looking for your next hit because this is then how your brain starts to go because now you've had to rewire your brain to say, wow, all of these things are not what I thought. So then when truth actually does start coming out, you start to psych yourself out because you want that other adrenaline hit of, no, there must be something more. There must be something deeper. And of course, there's always more to uncover. But when you get into the Hermetic principles, like the Kabbalion, you realize all truths are half truths. So that is like, I think the biggest advice for people getting into conspiracy stuff is if you are a truth seeker, continue to seek, because if you become a truth knower, you will only have half of the information. And like for myself, I really believed in a lot of these things. I believed celebrities were selling their souls. Now, with a more expanded view, I believe like, oh, this is like the same thing that actually happened to me, is a part of myself. There was a wounded inner child in me. And for me, it was quarantined. It was isolated in that room. For other people, it might not be quarantined because, however, their brain and their spirit decides to protect that part of themselves that has been wounded. Some people actually feed it. Some people, and this will happen, say someone like gets blacked out drunk. This like monster would almost like take over them. They're like, oh my God, this like Jekyll and Hyde thing is happening. That is that same thing. So these things that we believe to be demons, it's a part of ourself. Many demons are wounded inner child or wounded teenager or, something like that. And that they're so desperate for something that actually they take the front stage sometimes. Like, or sometimes, say I could be triggered by like something with like jealousy. And then that child part that felt jealous of other people's lives or whatever can take the front seat and start acting in a way completely sober that is like it is that like kind of like almost like a demonic thing coming forward. But demons are not outside of us. They're literally parts of ourselves that are asking to be seen, asking to be loved. And then there's the collective things like that. There are these collective demons almost, which are humanity's guilt, humanity's shame, humanity's jealousy. And it's like, now we need to start having people that are brave enough light workers to not think like I'm a demon slayer. Because I see a lot of too, like the people who do this type of work, they're like, I banish negative entities. And it's like, so what? This person's part of themselves gets what? Banished from themselves when it really just needs love and attention. It really just needs to be acknowledged and to be know that it's safe and that it's welcome here, even if it's unsavory, even if it is been through some stuff and is just reacting to a childhood or an event, So like, I really think that this is like the way that we change spirituality to go to the collective, to be able to, because, these isolated, you know, circles and things, guru, yoga, like all of these things are so beautiful in those containers. How do those containers become the whole world? And that's where this kind of 5D New Earth stuff has evolved for me, where I kind of felt like, oh, the whole world will be like these utopias. It'll take over the whole world and that'll be the thing. And it's like, actually, that's not practical at all. What it is these concepts get filtered into our real reality and can be integrated into real reality. And versus like some people will think it's going to be like a utopia as the world changes. And it's like, no, there will still be duality. There will still be division, but it won't be like this far apart. It'll be like this far apart where you can really see the other person's perspective and be able to respect a different perspective versus being at war with the other perspective.
Right. I love that. And so many things. First of all, just thank you so much for your bravery, for being that warrior, because listening to your story, I mean, it's clear it's not been easy for you to be like, well, I mean, I know it is now, but it's like, I saw a reptilian and I have a history of like really judging that. And then I saw it in myself. And to be publicly talking about that, I know that that had the potential to really kind of dig into that wound. So it just shows the work that's been done, and the integration that's happened. But the compassion that comes forth for ourselves and the healing that comes from that compassion and that willingness to be able to own, to be responsible for who we are and our healing and our worth and so forth. Um, and then just my own reflection of sometimes I'll have like, I really related when you were like, I didn't think I'd been on a ship, but I've had dreams that, feel like I've had interactions, or like when I'm in between sleep. And so I've had the same thing. Like I wouldn't say that I've been abducted, although I had Alan Steinfeld on last year, and he was like, I'm not saying you're an abductee, Kara, but you really sound like one. And I was like, okay, well, I like that. That's good. Um, but I've had visuals come in, in between. It's really that like between being like as I'm falling asleep, but I don't fall asleep, but then I'm just kind of hanging in this space, and then I'll start seeing things, and I might see patterns and colors, and but I don't often see form. But I remember there have been a couple of times where I have seen something that I'm like, that looks like it's reptilian, and it's like right there. I mean, just right there, couldn't be closer. And I'm seeing an eye, and I'm seeing the scales, and I'm seeing like these sharp teeth, and I'm like, well, I'm seeing inside myself. I mean, it's like I didn't go anywhere. I know I'm still in bed. I'm not on a ship. I could open I mean, I do often like, am I still in my bed? And it's like, no, I'm still in my bed. I'm still in my room. That's within me. And so then it's this curiosity of like, because the initial thing is like, no, no, hey, not me,
I'm a
and
good person. I'm
that's
not a
right.
reptilian. There's no
What the
reptilian
heck?
around here.
That's right. Where's the bouncer? Come on, guys. And but it's this then it's the curiosity of like, okay, well, what is this? Is it actually maybe it's a dragon and it's protecting me and I'm seeing it or maybe it's like maybe it is actually serving me to say, what are you going to do here? Like, what are you going to be afraid? Are you going to it's inside you. You're in charge here. So what are you doing? What are you going to do about this? And how are you going to feel about it? And that makes such a difference. I think just that, and I haven't solved it. And it's not something I see all the time, but I have seen it more than once. And, but it is this, like, if immediately were to go to like, oh no, that's, either denial, just like, that's not what I think it is, or I reject that,
Or you go
or
into some type of spiritual warfare with this thing.
right. Yeah. So all of that to say, like I say, I don't know what it is, why it's there, what it represented, but there were all these like questions that I had about it where it was like, well, I don't necessarily know that this was like, this means I'm evil. And I'm like, not who I think I am, or whatever I could tell myself. Um, but just back to your story and what you're doing with what you've learned. I really hope that listeners are taking this in because it's really powerful. And I won't go into the full thing of what it's opened up for me, but it really did change my perspective hearing you talk about that the first time, because then I had a memory just show up, and mine was a teenage memory. And it wasn't like hugely traumatic. I mean, we're not talking about human trafficking or anything like really, really heartbreaking. It was just like a regular heartbreaking thing that I had completely buried. And I haven't thought about it in 30 years. And when it showed up, I was shocked that I had forgotten about it because at the time it was a huge deal. And I was like, wow, I really, really buried that. And as soon as it showed up, I was like, my instinct was, oh, don't look at that. Don't look at that. You're not going to feel good if you look at that. And it was right around there that I just so happened to catch you talking about this. And I can't remember which came first. If it was like the memory surfaced and I recognized that I was like, nope, don't go there. And I was like, wait, what am I doing? Why am I afraid of that? And then I came upon your talk, or if it was like I watched that and then it surfaced like really quickly afterwards. I can't remember. But it was weird timing because it wasn't like a brand new talk or a live talk. And it was something that I just out of the blue was like, oh, I think I'd started watching it and then I didn't finish watching it. And it was one day while I was having lunch, it was like, oh, I never finished that. I'm going to go watch it like weeks later. And then you're talking about this, and it was so relevant and it was so helpful as I was going through this. And it really changed my perspective and helped me to be able to see the gift that I was being presented with, which was here is something you've frozen. Like it's just there. It didn't go away. It's frozen and it's in your energy and it's you. And you never claimed it. Like you exiled it. And at the same time, all of this internal family system started swirling around me too, where I'd been given a book for Christmas really randomly. And I was like, oh, okay, IFS. I'm not familiar with it. I got a whole stack of books for Christmas, so hadn't gotten around to reading it. And then I mentioned to somebody about seeing your talk and how this memory had surfaced. And she's like, oh, that's like IFS. And I'm like, well, what is that? And she's like, well, it's internal family systems. I'm like, oh my God, I was just holding that book last night because I was going to start my next book. And I didn't get a chance to crack it open, but I literally was holding it like, okay, this is my next one. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that what IFS was. So and that is all about like reclaiming these parts of ourselves and in becoming the totality of who we are. And so I know from experience that it's not easy to do and to own it. And I'm just so grateful that you were so courageous and willing to have your wounds poked so that other people could be inspired by you. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And one thing too that I would like to kind of add on to that, if other people are going to be either going through it or, having these moments, like something like you had this memory resurface, and it also kind of ties into the abduction stuff as well, is like things come up when they're safe for us. At that time, they were not safe. So, like, last year when I went through the shadow work journey, it was finally safe for me to feel all of these things around unworthiness, being unloved, all of these things that happened in my life. It was finally safe for me to be like, that was messed up and it's okay. Whereas at the time, I couldn't. I couldn't be like, that's not okay. I needed to be like, I'm good. I'm trekking forward. I'm doing it. So it's like our subconscious mind knows exactly when. And the same thing with even my abduction experience. It wasn't until a couple years ago that it was safe for me to know what actually happened. So just know that when these things come forward for anybody that will have this come up or has already had it come up, it doesn't mean that you're like all your healing work is like, oh, I'm not healed. I didn't realize how messed up I still am. Like, actually, it's really beautiful to be like, oh, now it's safe for this. And now I am in a place to nourish and heal this part of myself versus like, we can sometimes on the spiritual journey judge ourselves for like not being done yet or still having stuff, still having gunk inside that needs to be worked on. And it's like, just know that it's like, for a while, it couldn't be seen. And we will sometimes, the deeper you go, you'll see more things inside of yourself that you didn't even know were happening, that you didn't know that you felt. And it's like, instead of going to a place of judgment, go to like, oh, wow, look how far I've come that I'm actually safe enough to hold this space for myself.
Mm, I love that. And something else that just triggered within me was the couple of times because there was another time, another notable time after that one where something else surfaced, another memory through a dream actually. And then what I have noticed as these things have popped up and like you say, it's kind of like, okay, it's time. Like I'm ready now to really heal this or to even address it for the first time in the case of the first one. But I have noticed that as I go through this healing and because it's all like such inner work, right? So nobody's going to tell us when we're quote unquote done. We're just going to kind of feel like, okay, I integrated that, or that feels softer now, or however that feels for us. But I did notice that I was getting external reflections from God, from the universe, as I was like kind of feeling that things were complete. So with the first thing, there was the person who I don't have any animosity towards, and they don't either, but we grew apart a long time ago, but we're still friends on social network. But there was one, like LinkedIn or something, that I'm on, but I'm not active on it. And that very day, it was over a series of days, but as I was kind of feeling like things were complete, and there were a lot of different things coming up that I was like, again, with the internal family systems and really kind of working within myself through meditation. But that person who I don't talk to, and on a social media platform that I'm not active on, posted on my wall. And it was just some random kind of, but it was something to do with the two of us, like years ago, whatever it was. And I was just like, I looked at my phone and I was just like frozen of all the people to have just gotten a notification. And it was also because I'm not active on that platform. I had to be on my phone to get the alert, like when they did it. You know what I mean? Because they don't like pop up on my lock screen. And so I'm doing something else on my phone, and it's like, so and so just posted on your wall, or whatever they call it. And I was just like, I cannot believe that person of all the people, and they never post, nobody ever posts on my wall because I'm never on there. So bizarre.
Wow.
Did you
It's
find
like the
anything like
quantum
that?
entanglement.
Yes.
It really is. It's the quantum entanglement. And I think that also kind of um like similar to the family constellations method as well, where like you can heal something with a group of people and those that ripples out into your whole ancestral line. And it's like it's very interesting, and it's very similar to like oh, I was just thinking of you and then you called. But
Hmm.
this happens a lot with healing. I know a lot of people who've done energy work with people, and then when they get out of the session, they look at their phone and they have a text message from someone that they had an issue with in the past. And it's like, it really does ripple out. And I think, that's also the other thing too that is inspiring, is that like, the work that we're doing is being reflected in the outside world. And sometimes we're lucky enough to get that notification and to truly know. But then sometimes we really just have to trust it and know that it's happening behind the scenes and that we might never know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. Well, Jenn, this has just been every bit as fun as I knew it would. Can you please tell people how they can find you and your work, your amazing work, and if you have anything coming up where people can join in, please share.
So everybody can follow me. Right now, I'm probably most active on Instagram and YouTube. My biggest platform was TikTok, but now I'm kind of transitioning away from it because I don't know what's going to happen. But it's JK Ultra on all of them. Instagram is JK Ultra Jen with two N's. And I also have a Substack. So I have like a monthly subscription where we do a live event once a month for the paid subscribers. And it's a group hypnosis. So we work on different things. Like the most recent one was we just went to the void, and we went to like the creation, and it was really about like not being afraid of going to this vast nothing and to really see this beauty in the vast nothing of this is where all creation comes from. This is where everything in existence has come from. So we do like a group hypnosis, but also then a lot of times it's practical. So like sometimes it'll be like overcoming procrastination and releasing certain things. So it kind of changes of these different, it's a little bit of, grounded version of some of these things and how to like kind of pull these practical things into your real life. And kind of one of the things I love to talk about is like, people are always like, oh, are you going to do a quantum leap class? And I'm like, no, because the best way to quantum leap is to make a decision in your real life right now. Do the thing or don't do the thing. Go to the place or don't go to the place. That's the best quantum leap. So like, I like to really bring it into like practical terms. So my Substack is jennifercarmody.substack.com.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I've loved every second of this. Thank you so much for being here today.
I loved it. I want to do it again sometime, so let me know.
Absolutely. You're welcome anytime. Thank you for listening to this episode of Soul Elevation. Please take a moment to think about someone in your life who might be uplifted or have their curiosity sparked by this content and send it on to them. Let's keep sharing high frequency, empowering content to reinforce the highest potential for humanity. I also invite you to subscribe to this content. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you for the next episode of Soul Elevation.